think some academics would say that some universities have been extremely badly managed, that university leaders in the rush to kind of get these students from abroad, they've sort of borrowed a lot of money from the banks to build big accommodation centres or all kinds of facilities to attract them, and in perhaps they've overextended themselves, borrowed too much, and now they can't, perhaps financing those loans looks a little tricky.
Universities then are facing a cash catastrophe with threats of mergers and course cuts and job losses. The financial crisis is so serious that a senior Whitehall source has described it as top of a list of challenges inherited from the last government. It's the Sunday Times lead story today, and Sian Griffiths, the paper's education editor, is with us now. Sian, good morning to you.
Morning, Kate.
You'll be well versed, Sian, in the fact that our universities run at budget deficit. Many are in a precarious position. You've got some up-to-date reporting here ahead of a brand new year in September. Were you taken aback about some of the challenges being faced? Does it feel like we're at a bit of a make or break moment in trying to make this work for some universities at least?
Yes, I think it does, absolutely. This story is partly based on an interview that I did with Dr. Jo Grady, who is the chief of the Universities and Colleges Union. That's the main academic union. And she has written a letter this weekend to Bridget Phillipson, the new Education Secretary, calling for an emergency bailout of universities, a kind of rescue package from government. She told me that she thinks three leading universities are understood to be in serious financial peril. The union has, academics at the union have come up with this long list, 66 universities, which are looking at job cuts, looking at course closures. Some of them significant job cuts, about 2,000 jobs we think are at risk across the sector. And I spoke to some sort of star academics, people that are almost household names. Michael Rosen, for instance, a former children's laureate who's a professor of children's literature at Goldsmiths. He only knew a couple of weeks ago, he says, that his job was safe, but he still doesn't know whether the degree he teaches on is secure. So it's a massive problem. And the courses that are really under threat are the arts and humanities courses, and they are under threat across the university sector now. And I think it is a kind of national issue. The government needs to step in, I would say, if it can, to save, the kind of the mix of courses and degrees that we can offer students in the future.
Yeah. Why have universities got themselves into this position, or why has this position been arrived at? In terms of course choices, fees, budgets. I mean, how have they got themselves to this point of disaster?
I think university vice chancellors would say that the funding model is broken. I mean, that the funding model for universities now essentially depends on students. You have to recruit large numbers of students. Now, UK students pay £9,250 a year for their tuition. Overseas students from China, India, Nigeria in particular, they can pay up to £34,000, £35,000 a year for an undergraduate degree. So what universities have been doing is kind of, trying to recruit as many overseas students as possible, because that's where they get their money from. But the problem is overseas student numbers are flattening out. Visa restrictions that were introduced by the last government has also seen a decline in the numbers of overseas students applying to study here. And the latest figures show that, the recruitment pattern from overseas and UK students for the autumn is not as healthy as it has been.
The government might think that they shouldn't bail out institutions that should have been keeping their books better, Sian.
Well, I mean, I think some academics would say that some universities have been extremely badly managed, that university leaders in the rush to kind of get these students from abroad, they've sort of borrowed a lot of money from the banks to build big accommodation centres or all kinds of facilities to attract them, and in perhaps they've overextended themselves, borrowed too much, and now they can't, perhaps financing those loans looks a little tricky.
Yeah.
So I think it's complicated, to be honest, but I know, and the last government said very clearly it was not going to bail out a university, but really we have never seen a university collapse. If we were to see a major university collapse in this country, that would send shockwaves, not just across this system in this country, but around the world, because our universities are world leading.
Wow. Okay. Well, one solution, as you write, is to merge medium-sized universities. There's more detail at front page of the Times and online at thetimes.com in that one. Sian, I must speak to you about VAT on private school fees. It had been expected. So we had heard from Rachel Reeves at the Times CEO Summit, actually, saying that, that the increase to private school fees, the added VAT, wouldn't happen before 2025 at the earliest. People thought, well, it won't be halfway through. It'll naturally be September 2025, beginning of the academic year. But we're hearing, the Times is hearing, that that is not the case.
Well, it could come in as early as January 2025 is what we are reporting. That is a possibility. That we know that Bridget Phillipson is extremely keen and very serious about bringing in this policy. And technically, it could come in as early as January 2025. Head teachers in some schools have warned families that they may see a double hit on their fees in the academic year 2024-2025. Obviously, they've already seeing an 8% average fee increase from this September. Well, if the VAT charge comes in as early as January 2025, many schools will, raise fees again at the beginning of the academic year.
Yeah,
So
and look, that is 6 months away. So schools are going to have to get some clarity on this really soon, aren't they? And parents, obviously.
yeah, but I think what the government and many people in the government are saying is, listen, we've been talking about this for a couple of years now. It was in our manifesto. You knew this was coming. You've had plenty of time to make your plans. You don't have to pass all these savings on to parents. You can make efficiencies. The state sector has had to make efficiencies. This money is going to be spent on recruiting 6,500 extra specialist teachers for state schools, and goodness knows they are needed.
Always great to speak to you, Sian Griffiths, the paper's, the Sunday Times education editor. Thank you so much for being with us. Do let us know, by the way, does that news of it could be as early as January 2025 for those for the VAT on private school fees, if that affects you, if you've been presuming September based on what you'd been reading or hearing before, let us know. 0333 003 2353. How would January 2025 for VAT on school fees, private school fees, work for you? Do let us know.